Howdy folks, Kanaju here. I love No Man's Sky. You already know that. What you might not know though, from the deluge of positive content that I usually produce, is that I also have a list longer than Santa's of areas that the game could improve, and a list equally as long with suggestions on how that could be achieved. And while this video won't cover everything, judging by the length of this script I've put together, it's going to be a long one. So strap in, get a drink, or heat up your lunch, because by audience demand, here's my list of 25 ways No Man's Sky could improve. I hope you're ready for a balanced critique though, because I'll only be judging the game based on existing features and how they could be realistically improved. That means I won't be suggesting complete overhauls of the game or judging it for non-existent features that were never advertised. Instead, I'll be looking at what's there, where it falls short, and how they could improve it, based on how they've updated the game over the last 6 years. In other words, I won't be telling Hello Games to improve variation by adding 9 million new species to the game, but I might share my ideas on how existing species could be more effectively distributed for maximum impact. And while some of you mentioned it'd be great if Hello Games watched this video, let's be honest, I seriously doubt they watch my videos. That being said, if anyone from Hello Games is listening, hi! I'm a huge fan. Glad you like the playing cards. For legal purposes, I have already granted your studio an irrevocable license to all of these ideas, which you can find at the end of this video. But okay, I hope you're ready for some reasonable suggestions. Let's start with number 25. Holy cow. Factions. There are currently 3 factions in the game, in which you can gain or lose reputation with: the Gek, the Viking, and the Korvax. However, these standings barely affect anything. You might get slightly tougher missions or an extra dialogue choice from time to time, but in general, it doesn't make a difference to most players. Plus, you can easily max out all 3 without any risk of offending the others unless you're a pirate. This makes reputation feel kinda pointless. I think there should be more rewards for higher standing and more consequences for pissing factions off. For example, reaching max standing could grant you an exclusive appearance for that race. Or maybe each faction gives you a different perk in space stations. High Gek standing could give you discounts with trade terminals, high Korvax standing could give you discounts on star charts or exosuit tech, and Viking standing could unlock a second weapon cabinet or give you discounts on Exocraft or multi-tool tech. I don't know. Back in the Pathfinder era, this kind of existed because you needed certain standing with the current system's race in order to unlock certain blueprints for both tech and base building, but that was kind of a different thing. So maybe if you're attacked by pirates in a system where you have high standing, the system authorities could automatically send ships to assist you. Instead of using like a defense chit, you could have an option on there that says, Viking standing, call for help. And I'm sure you could think of more, but let's look at consequences. If you're infamous for attacking Viking freighters, then maybe you shouldn't be allowed to dock with Viking freighters until you improve that. Or maybe you can't land in Viking space stations until you bring your standing up, which you could do by interacting with Viking on planets. Or maybe you get locked out of trade terminals in Gek systems, or their prices might increase if you piss them off. Again, give reputation tangible gameplay implications, and then make it more difficult to remain in high standing with all factions simultaneously. Perhaps there's a battle between Gek and Viking occurring. If you help one side, you'll lose standing with the other. Or you could accept a mission to steal from the Korvax in support of another race. NPC interactions, space encounters, and even settlements could be good sources for inter-faction interaction. By encouraging players to pick a side, or not to, traveling between systems would be more engaging. I might only stick to Gek systems, or I might specifically try to improve my standing with the Korvax in order to get some specific resource, but in the process, piss off the Viking, who I now need to mend relations with somehow. I know this all sounds like a lot of stuff to add to the game, but even with just a couple of these things, it could make a huge difference. No new models or graphics would even be needed, just new text interactions. A reason to check the standing screen more often. Number 24, settlements. I love settlements. I love their architecture. I love their bustling streets. I love settlements. I rarely spend time in my settlement now that it's complete though. There's quite literally nothing to do outside of the occasional visitor or sentinel attack So let's improve that. Right now, settlements don't interact with the rest of the game. In contrast, when derelict freighters were added in 2020, they were perfectly integrated. They had exploration, procedural generation, lore, combat, survival elements. You could find upgrades for your freighter, you could get exclusive base building parts, you could unlock fun personal customizations, you could make money, increase your standing with factions. Almost every aspect of the game was tied into those derelicts, so they felt like a part of the universe. Settlements, not so much. Outside of the drone companion quest that was added this year, settlements don't have any real utility besides being a more permanent home base. You can't store things like your regular bases, you can't take it with you like a freighter, you can't even upgrade it like a ship. Your settler NPCs have less function than regular NPCs, and you can't even choose which resources your settlement produces. You can't choose which buildings to add, you can't do much more other than walk around and enjoy the procedural architecture. Which I do, because I love it. But again, so how could this be improved without a complete overhaul? Well, first let's make the existing buildings more interactive. After Frontiers launched, they patched in vendors and trade terminals to market buildings. That's pretty sweet, and it makes sense. They now function as markets. Nothing revolutionary, no new features that we hadn't seen before, but these buildings now had a purpose. Right now we have warehouse buildings full of shelves, lockers, and crates, so why not give us some extra storage space to store things? We have cantinas with jukeboxes. It'd be cool if we could skip to the next track. They also have bars with taps, so why can't we buy food or drinks from a bartender? I could go on, but you get the picture. By giving buildings something to interact with, it gives the player a reason to visit that building, which doesn't exist at the moment. Even archive buildings, which are less procedurally generated, have more things to interact with than settlements. Besides that though, how could settlements interact with other aspects of the game? Exploration-wise, what if you could recruit settlers from around the universe? Then you could choose if you wanted to build a settlement of travelers, Korvax, or a mix of everyone. You can already recruit the crew for your bases, wingmen for your squadron, frigates for your fleet, and creatures for companions. So why not settlers for your town? Or, think back to factions, maybe if you have high standing with the faction, they'll send envoys with gifts every now and again. Or, if you're infamous, your settlement could face attack, as seen in the Outlaws update trailer. Maybe market buildings offer rare stuff that isn't available at space stations. NPCs in the cantina could offer you unique missions, which might sound like a new feature, but procedural NPC missions have been in the game for years. Even base NPCs have daily missions, so why not settlement NPCs? Also, there's currently no difference between Gek, Vy'keen, and Korvax settlements, other than looks. But there should be. Perhaps each market could offer a different category of upgrades, or each bar could offer culturally appropriate libations. Granted, there are unique text events for each settlement type currently in the game, but again, it goes back to gameplay, utility, and variation. If I found out there was a drink I could only order from a Gek saloon, well, I'd be tempted to seek another player's settlement in order to try it. Right now, the only variation comes from the architecture, which, again, 10 out of 10, my favorite procedural generation in the game, alongside derelicts. But I'm hoping they continue to expand settlements, similarly to base building as time goes on. But of course, we'll see. Number 23, space stations. That's right, space stations need an overhaul. They need city-sized, fully procedural interiors and a bunch of other stuff. But that's not what this video is about. I said reasonable suggestions, right? So let's start with variation. I don't believe every space station needs to have everything. They don't. Make scrap dealers more likely to appear in high conflict or low economy systems. Have Exocraft upgrades be rare, or very rare, outside of Vy'keen systems. Maybe not every exosuit shop has an inventory upgrade. Have the cartographer and guild envoy swap places with other vendors every now and again. Add the component vendor that you find in planetary outposts back into the pool. You don't have to add any new assets in order to increase variety and make each space station visit feel a little more exciting. There's an empty room on the right side of every space station. Well, what if that had stuff like a refiner or a cooking station that were only accessible to players with high faction standing? or even something as simple as what you find behind Atlas Pass doors, which we will be getting to, don't worry. But it doesn't have to be new assets, just make it more interesting, like the room on the other side of the station. The exteriors of stations too could also do with a refresh. Back in 2019, I actually put together a physical book of concept art with ways the game could be improved without creating a bunch of new assets. For station exteriors, I figured they could keep the current models and just add a couple of things based on the dominant faction. Gex stations could feature those ticker tapes you sometimes see, or other holographic ads. Since they wouldn't need any collision meshes, they wouldn't affect AI pilots or need any significant programming. Korvax stations could have antennae, radio dishes, or similar additions that signify their observation of the universe and connection to the convergence. Vy'keen stations could feature those horns you sometimes see on Vy'keen, or these 4 triangle spikes I came up with. These would give them a sort of space fantasy vibe, and of course, this wouldn't be applied to all stations, but giving some stations a chance to stand out would be pretty cool. Additionally, stations in high conflict systems could have a higher chance of spawning those turrets we see in the new pirate stations, or some of the damage or debris you see on those in abandoned stations. There are a lot of ingredients they could play with to increase variety without adding anything new to the game. The key to variation in every case is not to have unbreakable rules, but rules that make certain things unlikely. If every high conflict system had a damaged station, it'd feel predictable. If 1 in 5 did, it would feel more believable and, importantly, special. Also, you should be able to buy carbon and warp cells from space stations. You just should. Maybe that could be another faction perk or something, so brand new players still need to craft them. But really, it makes sense to refuel at the space station. At least I think so. Alright, time for a speed round. Number 22. Trading posts. These are boring. There's one model for each of the 3 races, their layout never changes, and they're boring. So maybe introduce a randomly selected vendor so that they have a secondary function. Or maybe you can purchase fuel so it feels more like a spaceport. Maybe you can pay a guy to ferry you back to the space station if it's on the other side of the system. I don't know. To be honest, my biggest gripe is variation. Variation! Since there is none. Maybe they can vary the layout the same way they varied on space stations, with some trade centers having plants and some having sofas. Maybe it's adding hologram ads to some of them. Anything to add? Variation! Number 21. Space combat. It's better than it's ever been, but it could be even better. Why are there no boss battles in space? Sure, you can fight a Sentinel freighter, but it doesn't have a proper destruction effect. And why aren't there enemy combat frigates? Or pirate freighters that spawn pirates until you destroy them? Enemy mines to avoid? Things to make it more difficult for ace pilots and completely optional so that more casual players can avoid it. Unless you're a pirate or a Sentinel hunter, you'll never engage with a capital ship in your entire playthrough, which sounds like a bit of a missed opportunity to me. Number 20. Cooking. Why can't I buy food? There isn't a single food vendor in the game, despite there being literally hundreds of edible products. Let me buy food in my settlement saloon or at a space station's bar. Why isn't hunger a factor in survival mode? How come I can't see a recipe in my catalog after I've already cooked it? I have to look it up on the Assistant for No Man's Sky app, which I highly recommend, by the way. You'll also need the app in order to see what eating a specific food does before you actually add it to your inventory. And why can't we learn recipes as a reward from Cronus? Cooking is a completely ignorable feature of the game at the moment. A lot of players are probably happy about that, which I understand. But I still wish it was integrated into the universe a little bit better. You know, food exists, recipes exist, ingredients exist, yet no one makes or sells it except you and Cronus. Again, just adding a bartender to my settlement cantina would actually be enough to settle this for me. So, yeah. Number 19. Caves. I love caves. You know I love caves. Caves are cool, but they could be cooler. There are planetary points of interest, underwater points of interest, space points of interest, buried objects, and more. Yet, no point of interest specific to caves. There are 2 objects exclusive to caves, but why not add in some of those boxes and caches you find on the surface? Surely someone would have hidden something in a cave, right? Certain caves could be hazardous even. In my Spelunking in Space series, I forget which episode, I found a couple of caves with sub-biomes, meaning certain portions had thick volumetric fog and dripping water, whereas other parts didn't. What if certain caves got hotter or cooler the deeper you went? Why don't we ever find condensed carbon or sodium nitrate crystals in caves? Wouldn't those be more likely to form underground? People would probably be more motivated to explore a cave system if it was likely to yield something useful, even if it's not valuable. Caves are beautiful as they are, they're just not as interactive as the rest of the planet. Number 18. Ocean. Yes, variation, more procedural assets, less static ones, I hear you, but that requires a lot of 3D modeling. So let's see what we can do with what we already have. For one, sunken freighters should be as varied as regular crashed freighters. Right now, they all use the same model as the original Atlas Rises version. Sunken buildings could also use some more variation, same as their dry counterparts. On planets with crashed satellites to salvage, why aren't there any in the oceans? They're just as likely to crash there as anywhere else. And why do all oceans turn blue at night, even if they're red during the day? I mean, I understand why from an engine standpoint, but the explorer in me wants it to be red. And why doesn't it get darker the deeper you swim? Granted, it's not that deep, but you could simulate it. On that topic, why aren't some oceans more or less clear than others? Imagine finding a planet with murky waters. That would make clear beaches even more idyllic. And those waters would be really, kind of dangerous feeling to explore. Speaking of which, why isn't there pressure that increases with depth? Fair enough that it would be kind of difficult to communicate to the player, but it could manifest as an increase in life support use at greater depths. And, okay, this one is a little unrealistic, but why are all the oceans water? Imagine if you took the water table, which is essentially a big sphere on the planet, or rather a cube, but you took that and you replaced the water with a lava shader. You couldn't swim in it, of course, you wouldn't need any, physics, but it would just damage you to touch it. It would make lava planets feel even more unique. And let's face it, there are enough regular oceans in the universe, we could stand to trade a few for lava oceans. Now, I could mention the fact that we need deeper oceans, more flora and fauna variety, new water shaders, and plenty more. But again, trying to keep this measured, so let's stick with make some oceans murky for now. Speaking of lava planets though, number 17 is Volcanoes. I love the volcanoes added in the Origins update. Volcanic planets are really atmospheric. All of them are, because they're all very similar. I don't think every volcano planet needs to have the same dead trees. Why not have some regular trees from time to time? Why can't a lava planet be toxic? Why are the explosion effects on a blue volcano still red and orange? But seriously, while I love the idea of lava planets, see the previous entry, I don't think volcanoes should be exclusive to these planets. Wouldn't it be cool to be on a jungle planet and as you cross a hill, you see a volcano on the other side? Or why couldn't a regular radioactive planet also be geologically active? It would really spice up exploration without having to add a single new asset to the game. Dormant volcanoes could also be added to other planets, since those are already in the game too. Variation! Number 16. Weather. Now don't get me wrong, I really appreciate the new weather events added in Origins, and I really appreciate that they're not locked to a single biome, so you can have a radioactive storm with lightning tossed in, or a sandstorm with a chance of tornadoes, or a meteor shower on literally any planet. It's awesome. But what if it were awesomer? Did you know that back in the day, not all rainstorms were superheated? Some were ice cold, because that makes sense. When I get caught in the rain outside, I get chills and a cold, not boiled alive. So why can't some rainstorms be hot, some cold, and some kind of neutral? Why can't a desert have the occasional superheated rainstorm? Is there any reason it couldn't rain on a hot planet? Walls of fire are one of my favorite weather events, but why not give them a slim chance of occurring on other planets? Do animals get killed by fire and lightning? I don't know. They should, I know tornadoes are supposed to throw creatures, but I don't have the footage for it. Why don't we get the cool wind effects from boggy planets on other planets? Why can't we have a regular jungle with acid rain? Again, boggy planets can have both types of storms. And why aren't there foggy planets? Wouldn't that improve performance if you only had to render a short distance away? They have a fog effect when storms are active, so why aren't there just plain fog events? For crying out loud, why can't I see anything when there's a storm? I understand that we're wearing helmets and water or dust would cover it during a storm. I get it. I really do, but the effects around the edges of the screen combined with the limited visibility usually feels more annoying than dangerous. Also, they added weather status effects to the player in the Origins update, but they still don't have any effect on starship piloting outside of visibility. Just saying. Alright, halfway through though. If I had a sponsor, this would probably be an ad break, but since I rely solely on your viewership and kind words to keep these videos going at the moment, I want you to give yourself a pat on the back and give me a thumbs up if you're enjoying what is likely going to be one of my longest videos ever, that is. If you'd like to give me a thumbs down, I'm afraid you'll have to wait until the end of the video for that. Sorry for the inconvenience. Okay, now back to the video. Number 15, freighters. Overall, freighters are okay. However, as seen in this video here about cut features, I would love to see a return of the Galactic Commission Station. We can send frigates out on expeditions from our bridge, yet we can't go on missions ourselves. Kind of a shame, but I understand. Also, wouldn't it be cool to see our 4 hired wingmen either hanging out on the bridge or in the hangar? I think it'd be cool if we could actually interact with them the way we can interact with our base NPCs. Maybe they could be the source of daily missions or something. Then you wouldn't even need that Galactic Commission Station, I guess. Also, I have a couple pet peeves that have bothered me since 2018. Firstly, if I warp in my freighter, it'd be really cool to be able to see the warp from my freighter's bridge. Now, I know, that would be a lot of work, I understand that. And I understand why it cuts to a teleporter animation. Believe me, 100% get it. But when we're talking immersion, that would be really cool. Plus, if we have a friend aboard, it'd be even more fun to warp together if we could see each other. The other annoyance is not being able to call in my freighter when my friend is present. I know this is likely some limitation with the engine, but it'd be really cool to have both freighters present simultaneously in like a fleet formation. Speaking of fleets though, number 14 is frigates. Frigates are awesome, but they're also kind of broken. They have 4 landing pads and they used to work, but for the last couple of years my friend hasn't been able to land on one without dying. Kind of defeats the purpose of having 4 landing pads. Also, this invisible wall's bothered me since 2018. Plus, my frigates often make broken component sounds even when they're not broken. And, I guess this is mostly just a list of bugs when it comes to frigates, since they're actually pretty cool. Each type grants you a special reward or ability upon landing on them, and they upgrade over time. But it'd be cool if they had NPC crew members you could wave to as you made repairs. And I'd love if they were more varied, of course, but honestly, they're pretty cool. Well, I guess if I had one complaint, it'd be that the Leviathan frigate doesn't do anything particularly special. It'd be cool if it was like the only frigate you could chat with, even if it only had like limited text options, just to give it a little personality. Plus, it'd be cool if it had like a proper hologram, but I'm pretty sure that'll be fixed in the next patch, so I'm not worried about that. Speaking of living frigates though, number 13 is living ships. Again, I think living ships are pretty cool. They have a cool mission, they're expensive to obtain, they use different resources than regular starships, and they have a good amount of procedural variation. However, now that we have companions with personalities, I kinda wish I could communicate with our living ships a little more. I don't want to have to manage it like a Tamagotchi, but having it act more like a travel companion than just a regular ship would be pretty interesting. Plus, they added infected planets to the game with Origins that look like spawning grounds of living ships, yet there's no gameplay connection whatsoever. Right now, the only way to find upgrades for your living ship is to pulse around in it until a void egg pops up. It's kind of boring, Imagine instead if you could find living ship upgrades on infected planets, with different biomes giving you different upgrades. So lush infected biomes might spawn health upgrades, hot infected planets could be weapon upgrades, etc. The easiest way to find them would be to scan the atmosphere with a living ship. This could give players a more proactive way of upgrading their living ships. It would create stronger bond with their ship and tie its gameplay a little bit better into the universe and lore. And hey, if there was a unique interaction with your living frigate while in your living ship, that would be just the cherry on top. In fact, there are a lot of space encounters it'd be cool if your ship just added a line of commentary to. Nothing crazy, just a little flavor text to give them a little more personality. Oh, and I almost forgot. Now that they've added the ability to scramble cargo scans in the Outlaws update, that tech isn't available to living ships. So what if pirates and space stations simply couldn't scan your living ship? Maybe it didn't register as a starship to them or something, so they don't scan it. That might be a fun feature that gives it an extra advantage over regular ships. Might be OP, but it'd be a pretty cool reason to use one. But alright, number 12, the economy. Units, they're worthless in No Man's Sky. New players will disagree, but veteran players are probably nodding their heads right now. It's incredibly easy to reach the maximum unit count of about 4.3 billion. You can create a mine, create a farm, or just be handed a billion units in the space anomaly. As a result, activities that reward the player with money, such as bounties, missions, archaeology, and things like that, tend to feel pretty pointless for players who already have all the money they need. This isn't a problem for intrinsically motivated players such as myself, but it does make a lot of the game feel pointless to those who do need motivation. Any ship, any freighter, any item of any quantity, I can afford it. On one hand, it's a great economic power fantasy, but on the other hand, nothing feels as satisfying to purchase when you already know you have enough money for it. The satisfaction comes entirely from finding it. Nanites and Quicksilver feel pretty well balanced, assuming you're playing normally and not duping or save editing, of course. So how could Hello Games improve this? Well, I don't have a good solution outside of resetting everything, which I'd be open to, but I think a lot of people would be upset about. But I do have a bad suggestion. Okay. You're gonna hate me. Are you ready for this? What if different vendors and different systems use different currencies? Now, hear me out before you hit that dislike button. Firstly, this is what they did with the scrap dealer, and it worked for a time. It kept people from just buying everything as soon as they loaded in, and it forced them to engage with the new mechanics. Imagine if a tech vendor would only barter for albumin pearls or hypnotic eyes. Players would either need to find another vendor, or come back with the required stuff if they really wanted that upgrade. Or maybe apply inflation to it in a way, so you could purchase an item for 1 million units, or just a stack of silver, so it would encourage you to spend silver versus, having too much money. But you could always use that money if you have, too much of it. So it would also help, burn it a little bit faster. To complement the bartering though, missions in that system could provide that system's preferred currency as rewards. So you might undertake a couple of missions if you're interested in purchasing an expensive ship from that system. Or you might go to a system where you can easily get that stuff for cheap and then come back to purchase the ship. Each faction could also have a currency that's awarded for missions and interactions, kind of like a social currency, I guess. But if all this sounds tedious, well, it is, but money's pretty boring right now. And I'm not an economist, so I don't have a perfect solution. But bartering would kind of be cool, and also we need player trading. But no, let's move on to number 11, missions. I'm talking Nexus missions, guild missions, NPC missions, weekend missions. You know the missions. The ones that are kill 15 carnivorous plants, kill 15 predators, kill 15 sentinels, kill 15 minutes doing something you'd probably do anyway. To be frank, I don't mind the pirate hunting, freighter protecting, archaeology, and scanning missions. And I like reading the little procedural descriptions and chuckling about how absurd the universe is. Honestly, I think there should be a ton of low-level missions for new players to cut their teeth on. However, these simple repetitive missions offer little to long-time players, both in terms of rewards and gameplay. First, let's look at rewards. I don't need 200,000 units. We just went over this. However, a defense chit is a pretty good reward since I can't purchase those anywhere else. So that's the kind of stuff that I think makes for a great reward. Rare items that can't be purchased or crafted. Maybe consumables like fireworks that, once they're used, you can't really make a new one. High quality upgrades might also be good rewards, but the idea is, is something that even like a longtime player like me could use more of. As for gameplay though, we desperately need S-class missions. These could come in the form of guild missions. Since the Beyond update in 2019, guild envoys no longer offer missions, and instead they just give you a gift if you speak to them. For reasons we just discussed, this isn't all that interesting, and by the time you reach maximum rank, you're probably pretty well off already anyways. Instead, it'd be awesome if they could offer you exclusive, high-risk missions that only an experienced player could complete. I'm talking a procedural mix of combat, exploration, and puzzles. So, in other words, you take a pool of a dozen or so objective types, and you select from 3 to 6 of them, with a procedural story to string them together. Now, I know I'm making this sound easy. It is not easy, to be clear, but procedural stories and quests are something I think the game is sorely lacking. Imagine this, just a quick and dirty example, don't judge me. You need to acquire a package from a contact at a trade station for your mission. Cool. However, on the way there, you get a distress call and discover the contact was shot down. You locate the wreck and you check the black box for clues. You find out they were shot down by pirates looking for a specific resource. Well, when the pilot didn't comply, they were shot down and their cargo was stolen. So you head up to space with that same particular resource in your inventory in order to draw out those specific pirates. You can either engage in a dogfight with them or just pay them for the information. They're pretty greedy. Either way, you find out that the package was taken back to their home station, a pirate station. You head there, and you can either purchase the package for an absurd amount, more than the contact is paying you, or barter some other resource that you could find in that system. You see, this is like the most drawn out fetch quest ever, but at the same time, it's way more interesting than anything currently in the game. You have player choice, and it's completely unique to every other quest. For example, that contact could have survived the crash. The pirates who stole it could have been attacked and thus forced you to explore either a derelict freighter or a crashed freighter. The pirates might have destroyed the original package, but sold you the blueprint to craft a new one, giving you the choice to either craft something intricate to please the client, or simply report the truth that it was lost and collect your fee anyways. And that's just like one package stolen storyline. There could be research missions, trade missions, exploration missions, hunting missions, etc. I would create a series of flowcharts to demonstrate how this might work, but I desperately need to move on, so number 10, space. Okay, I know, it's a space game. Let me be more specific. The space between planets within a system. First off, it looks like we might be getting better asteroid fields soon, which I'm over the moon about, no pun intended. I've never liked when asteroids just kind of pop up right in front of you, so it'll be really cool to actually have these well-defined, big asteroid fields you can see from a distance. Next, I would love to see more variation in planet rings. Let's see some thinner rings, like those of Uranus. Let's see a system without planetary rings. In other words, set 0 as an option within the variation. I know, I make it sound easy, I'm an idiot, it's not that easy, but you know what I'm saying. I love the new nebulae that we see in space these days, but it'd be cool if they corresponded to the nebula and stuff that you see in the galactic map. It would help certain systems feel like destinations. Space points of interest? I like to see some of them in permanent positions, not just appear in pulse and disappear when you leave. Derelict freighters, rubble of the first spawn, listening stations, heck, even graves of the Ocean King would make for cool permanent points of interest. Locals could give you directions in exchange for cultural items. The main difficulty, and this is probably why they don't do this, so fair enough, the main difficulty would be finding them again after you leave them. There isn't really a system in the game right now to mark that kind of stuff permanently, and if you had too many it would fill up your screen with markers, and since we don't have proper headings in space, you might need to add some kind of functionality to toggle discovered POIs in your quick menu, but again, that's a lot of work, so fair enough if that's like too much. I understand. Number 9, single digits. Common resources. By that I mean the sodium and oxygen flowers you find on literally every planet. The same dihydrogen crystals, that same star bulb on every lush planet. I've done a full video about terrain generation and variation at length. But here's the short version. Increased variety doesn't matter when the interactive elements are the same on every planet. The solution is to vary common resources. That could mean having planets where crystals or flowers only form underground, or it could mean they come in the form of vines or tree sap or something on certain planets. For example, why couldn't carbon form into spheres on bubble planets instead of sharp crystals? Or why couldn't oxygen be frozen into ice on cold planets? Or resource crystals be more plentiful on lava planets, or rarer on some planets? What if certain resources only grew at certain altitudes, such as near sea level? Why can't sodium be buried on some planets? Couldn't oxygen plants float around or float on water? I know I'm kind of going wild on this one, I apologize, sort of breaking my own rule. But the idea is, if the bright glowing elements that look the same on every planet look just a little different on some planets, or were hidden completely, I believe exploration would benefit greatly. While we're on the topic, we don't need the same 3 carnivorous plants on every planet. I'm looking at you, toxic gas bubble thing. Imagine you're exploring a dense alien jungle, pushing past bushes and ferns, when suddenly a big bubble-blowing baby doesn't start shaking the entire screen, or a Venus flytrap doesn't bite your ankles. Also, why don't those plants kill animals? Presumably they evolved to eat the local fauna, so let's see it. I want to see a herd of cows taken out by a field of Venus flytraps. In fact, I want to see more of these things, in rare cases. I also want them to be more dangerous, like make them a bear trap, so if I get snagged I have to shoot it in order to escape or continue to take damage. Or the gas bubbles could coat my visor in something that obscures my vision, or the ground around it could be sticky, making it difficult to escape the burst. It could be varied. I don't know, I'm just making this stuff up, but seriously, make them damage animals and not Exocraft. Please and thank you. Number 8, Biomes. Ooh boy. Don't worry, I won't go into too much detail since this video is long enough as it is, but basically, mix the biomes up a little. I know, I make it sound easy. I'm an idiot. But in Origins, we got boggy biomes that could display flora and weather from either lush or toxic climates. We got infected biomes that could mix with any of the traditional climates. We got rocky biomes that could use the same rocky assets and change their appearance based on biome, while also bringing in assets from exotic biomes. We got dead planets with snow, lush planets with bubbles. It was awesome, honestly. But I want more. I'll admit it, I'm spoiled to even ask for any of this. But gosh darn it, the heart wants what the heart wants. I know some people want 900 new assets and multi-biome planets. Sure, who doesn't? But on a budget, we could also just mix up the existing stuff. Tastefully, of course. I've seen a lot of mods that just sort of mix everything up haphazardly, and honestly, it looks terrible most of the time. What I mean is to mix in assets from other biomes from time to time. Vary the density as well. Nowadays, the flora and object density on every planet seems to be pretty uniform and kind of set to high, but I'd love to see a desert with very large cactus. But, not every 12 feet. Give me some areas with lots of cactus and some parts with none. Make some trees only grow at certain altitudes so that the valleys look different from the mountain peaks. Ah man, I sound pretty demanding, I'm sorry. Hello Games, I'm a huge fan of your work. I'm honestly very happy with what we have right now. So, let's move on. And more colors please. Number 7, Fauna. Give me aggressive flying fauna. We have aggressive terrestrial creatures and aggressive fish, but I want to be dive bombed by a bird. I want to land on a planet, exit my ship, and be swarmed by the space equivalent of seagulls. I want baby space goats to get eaten by Venus flytraps. I want those swimming cows to chase me onto land if I insult their mother. That's right, amphibious creatures. In other words, I want creatures to be dangerous and unpredictable. If I go for a walk here in Texas, I might encounter a coyote, or I might encounter a domestic dog. I could meet a house cat or a cougar. There are snakes, spiders, more snakes, bears, boars, seagulls that will poop in your hair, trust me, and a bunch of other creatures you should know your way around if you're going for a hike. So why are the creatures on an infinite number of worlds so much more predictable than what I have here in Texas? Even within the game, we already have space jellyfish that attack you if you shoot their space coral. So why don't we have space bees that attack me when I try and steal space honey? Okay, yeah. I think I'm losing my mind here. This is the longest list I've ever compiled on YouTube, so it's uncharted territory for me. Number 6, Atlas passes. What's up with these? They used to be these really difficult to obtain passes that would grant you access to exclusive areas and services. And now they kind of suck. You can purchase the plans for all 3 on your first day, but they don't really do much. They open the door to these rooms, but there's nothing worthwhile in them for the grand majority of players. Unless, of course, you're trying to get all the remembrance lore, but that's very specific. Why not bring back extra weapon cabinets or implement them into quests somehow? Have it do something on the anomaly or the space station. I'm not sure, to be honest. First step would be to make them either more difficult to obtain again, or make them consumable since you can craft them, in order to give weight to their use. Then put better rewards behind those doors, or give them another purpose, such as when you interact with those messengers of the Atlas in space. Maybe they could teach you an extra word if you spent an Atlas pass or something. I don't know, but I gotta keep moving. Number 5, ruins. Why were these buried ruins made less varied with time? They used to appear at varying heights and with different roofs. Now they all kind of look the same. And actually, I do know why. I remember they'd be kind of buggy. Sometimes they'd be floating in the air. But, there must have been some compromise that didn't include, making them all static. But again, I am a programmer, but I didn't program this game. So I can't speak on that. But I would love to see some more variation. Also, I'd love to see random ruins sprinkled around that aren't points of interest. Just like a brick wall in a cave, or a collapsed walkway on the side of a hill. Kind of similar to what we saw in the pre-release trailers, which looked pretty cool actually. And speaking of which, I don't think we need flat terrain around them like we do the other buildings. I understand regular buildings have, NPCs that walk around, so you should have flat terrain. But come on, ruins look cooler if they're half buried or surrounded by trees. I think we can agree on that. But I understand that might be kind of hard-coded with the terrain generation for points of interest, so, again, I understand, but it would be really cool if they kind of blended more into the terrain. But again, I understand. Number 4, Exocraft. Okay, so the Exomech update made Exocraft kind of lamer by taking away their built-in hazard protection in order to make the Exomech more desirable, because it did have built-in hazard protection. But now that the mech has better combat abilities and an AI pilot, it doesn't need that advantage anymore to stand on its own, so it'd be cool if we could get automatic hazard protection back into the rest of the Exocraft. There's no real reason this giant space truck wouldn't have built-in heaters or an air filter. Then again, maybe the manufacturer's piecemealing features like modern car manufacturers. Wait a second. I'm the manufacturer. Number 3, Discoveries tab. To be clear, I love the Discoveries tab, the current one. It's the best we've ever had, and I love being able to see all the planets in the system. But again, I want more. Right now I can upload waypoints, but I'd love to see them marked on the little planet, similar to how I can see my current location on a planet. In fact, a 3D model of the planet would be cool too. Especially since all of the planets are kind of loaded in whenever you enter a system. It'd be great to actually be able to rotate the model in the discovery page, especially for planets with unique continental features such as hemispheres spanning oceans or Great Lakes. Then we could simply rotate the planet and look for a cool place to land, and even better it'd be, if we could mark it and then, visit that in our starship. But even just being able to rotate it would be really cool. Alright, number 2, challenge. Let's face it, the game's too easy once you hit a certain level. Stuff doesn't really damage you, nothing costs more than you can afford, and it's really just RNG at that point, right? There's no real difficulty to it. Now, this is great for casual players, of course, of which I sometimes am, but when I go looking for a challenge, I rarely find one. So it'd be great if there was a mission that, I only have a chance of surviving if all my gear is S-class, or give me a puzzle that I can fail, due not to luck, but like a fair mistake. In other words, give us more optional endgame content that puts our knowledge, skills, and equipment to the test. Kind of like the latest expedition, I suppose, but minus the permadeath, since this game still has quite a few unfortunate bugs. Although that being said, I did see someone suggest having permadeath expeditions as an option for additional rewards, and that sounds pretty cool. Like after I complete the initial expedition, then rerun it again in permadeath. I could see that being a lot of fun, but let me move on to my number 1. Variation. Variation. To be fair, you've heard me go on about variation for like the last hour or so. So all I'll say here is that variation doesn't mean more static assets in the game, and it doesn't have to mean more procedural parts either. Variation is best when it surprises players. That could be as simple as seeing a volcano on a boggy planet, or a rainstorm on a volcanic planet. Instead of strict rules for every variable, probabilities might be more effective. Maybe 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000 planets might have one exceptional feature. And maybe players never find it. But when they do, it'll surprise them, and it'll give other players something to search for, which I think is one of the best qualities of this game. But, alright, that's it for me. Holy cow, this video got out of control. Those are 25 No Man's Sky shortcomings and suggestions on how to improve them from me, Kanaju. This video was by no means comprehensive, but come on, I've got to call it somewhere. So now it's your turn. I want to see what you have to say in the comments below, both about how long this video was and how you might, fix some of these issues that I brought up, or whether or not you even have issues with any of this. But remember, I love No Man's Sky, we all love No Man's Sky, and I think it's better today than it's ever been. If Hello Games stopped updating it tomorrow, I'd be pretty happy with where it is. But I wouldn't complain if they decided to address these issues too. So try and keep it positive in the comments if you can. And if you enjoyed my critique or just respect the effort, go ahead and leave a like if you like. And for those of you who waited patiently to dislike the video, thank you. Now is your opportunity to dislike it. And it's past. If you're interested in more detailed and generally quite positive No Man's Sky discussion and more, check out my other videos and subscribe if you enjoy them. I make a new No Man's Sky video every Friday, and sometimes more if I have the time that week. Not this week, of course, because, this video obviously took a long time, but, maybe next week. And 1,000 thanks to my nearly 6K subscribers. I can't thank you enough for helping me realize my dream of making detailed videos about the topics I love, and I hope you'll stick around as I continue to figure out this whole YouTube thing. And hey, if we hit 6K by the time you're watching this, woohoo! So, thanks a bunch, and I'll see you next week. Bye! Howdy again. If you're listening to this, you're either with Hello Games, or you just haven't figured out which video to click next. I recommend this one. For the legal team, please listen to the following.
This video contains original ideas created for Hello Games at the direction and discretion of the author and speaker, which is me. The author grants Hello Games Ltd, or Hello Games Limited, an irrevocable, perpetual license to republish, reuse, resell, and create derivative works of all original art and concepts presented in this video for any commercial or personal use. This includes but is not limited to video games, marketing assets, videos, merchandising, or any other published works. This license is granted without requirement for any attribution or compensation. The original artworks and concepts presented within this work are considered property of Hello Games Ltd. The author waives his legal right to restrict or contest the use of these original concepts by Hello Games Ltd and its associates. Hello Games Ltd does not need to take any further action in order for this license to be recognized.
Thanks again, and really, just click any video. Can't go wrong. Bye!